Welcome on into the Hockey Talk Show, live with you here on this Tuesday, February 27th, just one day removed from the NHL Trade Deadline 2018. And on this episode of the show, we've got some reaction to what happened yesterday coming from the general managers in the league. Speaking of which, had some pretty big injuries post-trade deadline. Speaking of timing. Also on the show today, not only some injuries to the top teams, but we got a new top team in the Philadelphia Flyers. What the hell? Plus some of the shocking facts that arose yesterday during the NHL trade deadline. We get into all that and so much more on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Oh, yeah, baby. Hockey Talk Show on this Tuesday, February 27th. Wherever you're watching or listening from and however you're doing it, thanks so much for taking on the Hockey Talk Show. Of course, rate and review if you're listening via podcast. And if you're here in Facebook or YouTube chat, let me know that you're here so I can shout you out and we can tailor make the show around you and any questions that you may have on the program today. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of reaction towards yesterday's NHL trade deadline, which all in all looked pretty dull and quiet right up until the point that we had that Ryan McDonagh deal and then the Thomas Tatar deal and then some of the other big deals that we thought were going to happen all sort of came into fruition. And overall, not all that bad of a trade deadline. Now, it is a smidge on the depressing side, and well, I shouldn't say depressing. I should say it's a smidge on the disappointment side if you consider some of the names that could have been your Erik Karlssons, your Max Pacioretty's, you know, some of these guys that didn't wind up moving. But as we'll see from some of the comments that we have to get to here today from the general managers, and we're going to hear from the, you know, general managers of Montreal, Buffalo, the Rangers, and the Winnipeg Jets, some of the winners and losers in the NHL trade deadline yesterday. Going to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights and you know, some of the other teams that made some moves here, St. Louis, and what that means for them moving forward. We've got a really great show, jam-packed, and a lot of explanation on some of the questions that were left unanswered from yesterday's NHL trade deadline show. By the way, thank you guys all so much for spreading the word. I see the Facebooks and the tweets and everything else that you guys are throwing around. And as you can see, or I don't know if you're really paying that much of attention, but we are growing very, very quickly here the last couple of weeks and days. So thank you so much for that. Some playful trash talking already going on in the YouTube chat. I love it. It's good to see a Ranger fan wishing a Tampa Bay Lightning fan well with their former team. When you get down to it, there's this weird thing between the Rangers, Columbus, and Tampa, where like half the teams in Columbus, half the teams in Tampa, and you know, it's got to be weird for Ranger fans. I noticed a lot more frustration in everybody today, and I noticed that when it gets this, because all right, so I do a radio show here on Long Island, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, hockey coverage in the New York area, not all that overwhelming, which was part of the reason why we led to this show. But not the number one sport here. Obviously, it's baseball and then basketball and football. And you could argue with the order there, but baseball I feel is first, and maybe football, then basketball, and then hockey is leading up the end. So with the show that I do in the mornings is very music based, a little bit of entertainment, and you know, a lot of just talk around music. We play some music, we talk a lot of music, we do some entertainment stuff. Not a lot of sports stuff there. And when I mentioned the Rangers trade this morning, a lot of the sports fans came out of the woodwork to, you know, voice their displeasure with the New York Rangers and their rebuild. But overall, I'm telling you, and I remain optimistic. It's an exciting time for Ranger fans. Yeah, it's depressing, but when you get down to it, you know, you got you got Spoons in here, you got Nemestikov, you got a lot of guys to look at. Some of these rookies, a new goaltender, You got a lot of, a lot of players to evaluate and check out and see what you have. And believe me, it may suck over these 19 games, but then you get into the draft and you have all these picks and who are you going to get? It kind of becomes a little bit like Christmas morning, It really, really does become like Christmas morning. And for the Rangers, it's Christmas morning in a wealthy family. Think about what Islander fans go through. It's Christmas morning in a poor family. Like we're sitting there going, maybe we'll get like a cheap phone, a Samsung iPhone knockoff. You guys are sitting there like getting rose gold iPhone 10s. So, perspective, Ranger fans. It could be worse. You could be fans of the Arizona Coyotes. All right, now that we're alienating some of the audience here, let's get to some of the depressing news from yesterday. And let's start with the Boston Bruins and where they're at. Boston Bruins, Patrice Bergeron out indefinitely. Fracture in his foot. Not great news for the Boston Bruins. And it's really interesting how some of these injuries sort of occur or become known to you well after the trade deadline has passed, so you can't really do anything with them. If you knew about this a couple of days ago, that certainly would change some things. Let's move through. We've got a new deal for Patrick Hornquist. He signs a 5-year extension as a 31-year-old with Pittsburgh. Honestly, gets a good deal here. It's good for him. I believe it's okay for the Pittsburgh Penguins. A slight raise. He's making around 4.2 this year. He'll go up to a little bit over 5 for next year. And it looks like 72 stays in the lineup as the Pittsburgh Penguins continue to pad their third line with first and second line players. No doubt looking for a three-peat. And honestly, I was a little surprised by this. Hornquist is good. He's a great player. It's just an embarrassment of riches a little bit over there in Pittsburgh. And I was a little surprised to see a 5-year deal for a 31-year-old. This is why Jimmy Rutherford gets the big money. If I am looking at a third-line 31-year-old player asking me for $5 million a year for the next 5 years, I would tell him to go walk. I would have certainly been a lot more comfortable with 3. I'm sure Jimmy Rutherford probably feels the same way I do. But in the world of reality, you got to get what you got to get. And if you love this guy and you want to keep him on your roster, then you give him 5. And I certainly can totally understand that. Here's another huge problem for the Stanley Cup champions. Speaking of injuries, Matt Murray is going to be out indefinitely. Concussion. Took a slap shot to the head in practice yesterday. And Mike Sullivan says upper body injury, out indefinitely. Not sure what they're going to do there. Now, Tristan Jarry has been doing a phenomenal job backing up. Casey DeSmith has had some spot starts here or there. Jarry is 10-4-2, 2.58 goals against average, 916 save percentage in 20 games this season. DeSmith is 3-3 with a 2.23 goals against average. So it must be really nice to have backup goaltenders that have well under 2.5 goals. Well, I should say well under 3 goals a game averages when a lot of teams were struggling this year with mediocre goaltending, i.e. the Islanders, the Edmonton Oilers, the Ottawa Senators, with goaltending that should have been better and wasn't. Here are the Pittsburgh Penguins with, by all accounts, right after they got rid of their Fleury-Murray situation, are moving into a Murray-Jarry situation. So that will be the talk, I'm sure, over the next couple of years as Tristan Jarry continues to just play lights out. But think about this for a question, and this is a great hypothetical. How different would this trade line be if the trade deadline was today? How insanely different does this trade deadline look when you have the Boston Bruins, a top team, losing Patrice Bergeron, one of their top line players, and the Pittsburgh Penguins losing their top flight goaltender? Evander, welcome in, my man. We are going to talk about the Caps as well. I got some interesting Cap conversation. So stick around for that. Think about that. I mean, yes, I think Tristan Jarry stays here and does a good job, but think about how much different this deadline would be if it were today instead of yesterday with all these injuries and some of these moves that we're seeing here today. I think that's pretty darn interesting. We're going to hear from the general managers on some of their reactions to what occurred yesterday. Overall, how does the trade deadline sit with you? Let me know how you feel 24 hours later. Boy, there's a lot of chat. Am I missing anything on the? I'm missing all the chatter here on the YouTube. Let's see here. Tampa became a lot better, but Winnipeg and Nashville, who I'm worried about. If I have to worry about an Eastern team, that means Vegas makes it to the Cup. That from Vegas Golden Knights coverage. Thanks for joining us again, man. Tampa certainly a powerhouse. Nashville certainly a powerhouse. Winnipeg gets better yesterday. We saw a lot of teams step it up and get a little bit better. I do want to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. And that is, let's do that right now, and then we'll get into the general manager reaction. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this, Vegas Golden Knights. I thought it was a good move bringing in Thomas Tatar. I really did. But then this got floated around a whole bunch today, which is that with Tatar coming in, a lot of people think that James Neal goes out. Now, I don't feel that way. And I'm curious to know what you Vegas Golden Knights fans feel about this one. Does the Tatar acquisition mean that Neal is out? Certainly, Tatar not that far off of a goal pace from Neal. I don't think Tatar is as exciting as a player as Neal is. Neal, to me, is a 30, sometimes 40 goal scorer, where Tatar is a 20, sometimes 30 goal scorer. Is sort of in that range is where I see them without looking at their stats hardcore. That's just how I feel about the type of players that they are. And I don't necessarily think that this is a bad thing for James Neal. Now, it's very curious that, Marchessault has re-signed and, some of the guys who have gone to Vegas have re-signed, and we don't have Neal's name on a line yet. But I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I don't. I think that James Neal has no real loyalty towards the Vegas Golden Knights. He's only been there for a year, but that's not to say that he doesn't love it. I really struggle to find anything that said that James Neal is looking to go elsewhere. I know there was some buzz around his name, trade deadline. I knew that was just buzz because for buzz's sake, no team in that position trades one of their highest goal scorers. Just doesn't happen. So I knew he wasn't going to go anywhere, but does he go anywhere in the offseason? I don't know. I don't think so. I think George McPhee is going to make every effort he can make to re-sign him. And let's be honest, if Vegas is not the place for him, it's not for lack of a good team because they've got one. Maybe he doesn't like the area. Maybe he wants to be back in the East Coast. Maybe he has a favorite place that he's always wanted to go to. And, amidst his being traded all around, hasn't really been able to get to his destination where he's always wanted to be. Maybe he's always wanted to be an Ottawa Senator. Maybe he's always wanted to be a New Jersey Devil. Who really knows? Only Neal does, but I don't think that the idea of James Neal re-signing in Vegas is off the table. I really, really don't. Liz, as a Rangers fan, we've had a couple of weeks to get used to the idea of losing everyone. I'm happy about all the picks. I think the Islanders fans should feel bad because they didn't get anyone really. We do. I've taken a consensus amongst most Islander fans, and still miserable. Still miserable. Perhaps 10 or 15% more than we were before yesterday. Plus, the Rangers didn't lose Zuccarello. Look, yeah, and it's a great point. Zuccarello's still there. Chris Kreider still there. That may be good or bad, depending on how you feel about Kreider. You still do have Henrik Lundqvist. You still have a lot of core pieces, and you got some options moving forward. So again, it's a super, super exciting time. But as we've seen with Boston, with Jersey, with Philadelphia, we've got a scenario where a lot of teams feel like they can rebuild on the move. Let's see. Vegas Golden Knights thinks Vegas Golden Knights coverage By the way, do we have a real name, Vegas Golden Knights coverage? Because I feel weird saying Vegas Golden Knights coverage over and over again. I think Neil is gone. I think they will try a 2 to 4 year contract. Maybe Tatar is their plan B. Yeah, see, you know what the problem is I don't know what James Neal's intentions are. I certainly understand the argument that Tatar means Neal goes. But Louis, welcome. Thanks. I don't think that. I think we don't know the intentions of Neal, and B, there's certainly enough money to keep the both of them. So, now, here's the question: does Tatar here and the ability to get Carlson make you forget about James Neal? And I think the answer to that is yes. Who the hell cares about James Neal if at the end of the day you wind up with Tatar and Carlson? I think that's a great exchange. That's an exchange I would make any day of the week, even if I have to take on the Bobby Ryan contract, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Evan thought re-signing Perron is more important. Evan thinks re-signing Perron is more important than re-signing Neal. Certainly can make that argument. I mean, I like James Neal. To me, he's a proven leader, proven goal scorer. Perron's had his up and downs. He's obviously been a part of this surging. They can't resurge. They never surged. Surging Vegas Golden Knights team. It's just so weird to talk about a first-year team sometimes without saying the old cliches. His resurgence is part of the surge of the Vegas Golden Knights, is the way that it should be said. And yeah, he's fit in really well. He's fit in really well there. You have a lot of great stories with Carlson and some of these guys. And by the way, much like Nash in Boston, where we're doubling down on the Nash, we got 2 Nashes now in Boston. I'd love to have 2 Carlsons in Vegas, William and Eric. I just think this is the trend of the National Hockey League. Marchessault leading your team, 62 points, 22 goals, 40 assists. His name's on the dotted line. It's great news. Smith was such a great pickup, just phenomenal all the way around. 21 goals, 36 assists. Perron has 17 more points than James Neal. I didn't realize that. 15 goals, 42 assists. Obviously a little bit more of a passer than a shooter. Carlson, 33 goals, 23 assists. Just, outstanding. Just ridiculous. I mean, how many of these guys? We knew Marchessault. We knew Smith was decent, but Perron, Carlson, Eric Holla, some of these guys that were literally just cast aside. William Carlson, 33 goals in 62 games. I mean, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable what they're doing over there in Vegas. It's just insanity. So yeah, if you put a premium on Perron over James Neal, I could certainly understand that. There's just something about, to me, James Neal is a leader, is a captain-like player, is, as far as his stature goes, to me, he has greater stature than a David Perron. I think people fear him more on the other side of the lineup. And I think, he's just one of these, big-time leaders, won a lot more, I don't know. Not to take away from Perron. Certainly, Evan, your argument holds true in the points this season. I just like James Neal a whole ton, and I love the dynamic that he provides for this team. I think he gives a lot to the Vegas Golden Knights outside of, just his statistics. Let me see here. Austin, that's a great question. Ask that in a little bit here. I want to get back to that one. I believe that the Rangers could have gotten someone better than Vladdy, says Chris. I'm sure they tried. I'm sure Braden Point was definitely in the discussion. And you know what I thought of too, and I know that a lot of Ranger fans were upset yesterday. I think that JT Miller got thrown in because if you are going to give away Vladdy, and by the way, Vladdy's an RFA, and we know that Tampa's uptight against the cap, you have more term on JT Miller, something that we didn't really have a chance to dig into yesterday, which is, again, what's fun about doing the show a day later and continuing to analyze the deals is that JT Miller is under contract for a couple more years. So it gives the Tampa Bay Lightning some cost certainty moving forward. Miller is not Nemensnikov, but he's not that far off. And if you have him for longer term under control, that's all the better for a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are obviously, in and around maxing themselves out on the cap. I mean, when you look at the caliber of players that Stevie Yzerman has assembled together for how much each one of them is individually making, he has done a phenomenal job at managing his cap. He really has. He has kept salaries down all across the board, and he still has some decent amount of cap space to work with. I mean, his current projected cap space right now is around $4 million. And look who he's got under contract. I mean, it's kind of insane. He's done a really, really good job at managing this cap, especially when you look at some of the other teams and where they're at, i.e. today, the Washington Capitals have $44,000 of cap space and nowhere near the caliber of roster that the Tampa Bay Lightning have. So, he's done a really, really good job. You really, with a misstep last year, honest to goodness, for 1 year of a misstep, you can't have too many complaints about Stevie Yzerman. I wonder if someone else would have been in the mix for the Rangers to get point, maybe like Zuccarello or Zibanejad. I think Zibanejad is Jeff Gordon's guy. I think that was his first real, we should go and get that guy. So I don't think that Zibanejad would be available, but Zuccarello definitely possible. And again, I don't have their numbers in front of me, but I would gather that the simplistic reason of salary would probably come into effect with that, because if I had to guess, Zuccarello is making a bit more than Point. Zuccarello $4.5 million this year and next, and Point is a $686,000 player. So yeah, that would be it. That would be it. The point production you're getting from Point makes sense to hold on to him instead of sacrificing $4 million for around the same point production. So it's a great question. Uncle Buck, James Neal can get more fans in the building as opposed to Perron. Both great players, but goals are harder to come by than assists. It's a good point, Uncle Buck. That is a good point. Probably selling more jerseys than David Perron is. I would guess that too. McDonough is going to wear the same number as Jonathan Drouin. Vegas has no problem getting people in the building. Interesting point. But still, you got to sell jerseys, and I would bet there are more 18 jerseys than there are 47. 57? I think he wears 57. Austin, I love Yzerman, but I worry one day he will go to the Red Wings to be their GM. Uncle Buck, yeah, most of the fans are from the away team. There is a lot of away fans at the Vegas games, but we knew that was going to be the case. It's just a tourist town. When you go to a Ranger game, honest to goodness, there are a lot of out-of-town fans at Ranger games. There's a lot of... by the way, you'll get it more so with the Devils and the Islanders. There's even more out-of-town fans at both of their arenas. It's just because New York's a tourist town. But you get a lot of visiting players. Not so much at the Ranger games as the other two teams, but you do get a lot. You do get a lot. Same thing in Los Angeles. You get a lot of visitors going there, because people go and visit LA. As far as Yzerman going to the Red Wings, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think that it was more possible. See, the problem is the last time I think Holland was up, Stevie Y was only there for a year or so. He was very young. I know that he was talked about to go there, but he was very young. And there was obviously a lot of loyalty to Ken Holland. Now it's different. But now I don't know if Yzerman's loyalty has been built up with Tampa. It's really an interesting question, right? Who does he love more? Because I'm sure everybody has that team that's their team, and they feel that loyalty, and that might be Detroit for Yzerman. But on the other hand, look at all the hard work he has built in putting this team together. I think he wants to see it through. I don't think he leaves before he wins a cup, and if he leaves after a cup, I don't think you're going to complain, because nobody complains after they win a Stanley Cup. Doesn't matter how ripped apart your team becomes once that's done. Neil making All-Star over Carlson proves he's one of the faces. That's absolutely true. Evan, excellent point. That's the problem. A lot of new fans here are emotionally attached to certain players, and Neil is one of them. He is. And I think from a PR standpoint, although Vegas doesn't have too much PR to worry about, it would be in their best interest. It would behoove them. Use behoove every chance I can get. To bring Neil back into the mix. I really, really do feel that way. But let's talk about Philly really quick before we hear from some of the general managers. We are literally in a point where we're sitting here on a post-trade deadline Tuesday, and look who's up at top of this list. I mean, can you friggin' believe this? The Philadelphia Flyers are the #1 team in the Metropolitan Division. This was a team that was out of contention just 25 games ago. 25 games ago. Look at their last 10. 9-0-1. Streaks is how you win in the National Hockey League. You have got to go on good runs. You can afford to go 500 and still be okay, but you have got to put a string of 6-4, 7-3, 9-1, whatever it is. You've got to put runs together. The Philadelphia Flyers, in the most quiet way possible, with zero people paying attention to them, with more people worried about how Erik Karlsson was going to get traded when he never wound up getting traded to begin with. They have slid their way up past the New Jersey Devils, past the Pittsburgh Penguins, past the Washington Capitals into first place. I mean, it's insane. 20 games ago, if I were to tell you, watch this, and I wish I did, because I would be a genius. I would be a genius. So far, I only got the Rangers collapse right. And maybe a couple other little things. But whoever called this one, which I can assure you nobody did, including all the moms of all the current Flyers, even though they believe in their little boy, nobody saw this coming. The Philadelphia Flyers on top of the Metropolitan Division. It is insane. It is absolutely insane. Again, and I hate to harp back on this, but you point and look at the inability of Garth Snow to build a team and look at where the Philadelphia Flyers are. You look at the misstep of the Florida Panthers pushing Dale Talon aside and look at where they are. They didn't even make the cut. Look, they're not even on the damn screen. I got to move it up. Look, I got to just to get the Florida Panthers in the mix. The misstep and the dumb move of pushing Dale Talon aside for 2 years. And look at how far set back they've been. Look at the bad contracts that the Detroit Red Wings have been signing. And look at where they are, not even on the screen. And look at where the Philadelphia Flyers are. All right, so when we talk about rebuilds and things of that nature for the Rangers, this is exactly what the New York Rangers are trying to do. What the Flyers have done, what the Bruins have done, what the Devils have done. Rebuild on the fly. Just rebuild on the fly. Austin, I've only seen one article about the Flyers leading the Metropolitan Division because nobody knows. Literally nobody knows who they're there. There's literally nobody knowing they're there. I remember when Philly lost 10 straight. Makes this run even more impressive, in my opinion. It is. It is. Yeah, they're gonna get some love now. The Philadelphia Flyers. People are gonna be talking about the Philadelphia Flyers now because they're in first place. But it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and I honestly think that it is great news for the wild card teams, whether it's Jersey or Columbus or the Islanders or Carolina. The Flyers are beatable. I know they're outstanding now, but there's a lot of holes in that roster. They're playing really good, but there's a lot of holes in that roster. I would rather play the Philadelphia Flyers, as hot as they are, than the Caps and the Pittsburgh Penguins and Tampa and Toronto and Boston. I'm sorry, I just would. You want to get hot at the right time of the year? I mean, it's super important to do that. You really want to get hot at the right time of the year. But I think that Philly is a beatable team. I really, really do. Do I think Philly can beat the Penguins in a playoff series? Nope. It's possible. I don't think they would. I wouldn't put money on that. And Simmons is still injured. That's a great point. Simmons is still hurt. He's really a backbone of this team, and not there right now. So we'll see what happens with the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's talk about and get some of the reaction from the general managers after the trade deadline yesterday. We've got some great audio for you from some of the managers. We'll hear from the Rangers manager. We'll hear from the Winnipeg Jets manager, from the Buffalo Sabres manager. Sabres, I felt, had a disappointing deadline with the move of Evander Kane. And I think you're going to jaw drop a little bit when you hear from Jason Botterill. And we'll get to that momentarily. First, let's get to Marc Bergevin. And this is what you got to love about Canadian media. The first question, or maybe it was the second question they asked it is, will you be back? That was the question. Will you be back? Have you met with ownership? Do you know if you have a job next season?
Looking ahead now to the draft and July 1st, has Jeff Molson spoken with you and confirmed that you will be back right through all this? And if he has, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, we talk every day. We sat down and we went over our plan, the way we're going to move forward with this team, and we're on the same page, and we're going to put it together, and we'll be there in the draft in Dallas.
Kyle?
And there you go. Are you going to be here? Are you still going? You still think you're going to be here? Here's a question for you, Mark. Do you still have a job, and how do you feel about that? Because we all think it's a joke. Just to let you know, we think this is completely ridiculous that we still have to ask you questions and not your replacement. How do you feel about that? Because honestly, there's some of us here that are a little upset. Because some of us put money on the fact that you'd be fired by now, and now some of us have to pay up. I'm just speaking in broad terms, as broad as we can possibly get. Those are just my feelings on that one. Brutal. Brutal, that Canadian media, though, isn't it? Brutal. The New York Rangers really shook up the hockey world. I'm surprised by how much press this letter to the fans has gotten. I mean, it really has. Every general manager has been asked about this letter. Everybody's surprised. I wasn't as surprised. I mean, to me, it was a letter. It was a move. They were trying. They knew they were going to blow this thing up. They thought, let's be honest. Let's have communication. We know we're going to take a hit here. We're the New York Rangers. We're always going for it all the time. We're not going to do that this time around. Let's address the elephant in the room and let's tell our fans. But I'm telling you, this letter that they sent out has sent just reverberation throughout the entire league, and all these general managers have to answer to this letter, including one Marc Bergevin. Here he was asked about the Rangers letter. Why didn't they do anything similar, even though their approach to this season of burning it down was around the same as the Rangers?
For the club, considering the disappointment of this season.
Well, the letter, it's what every team does differently. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I mean, it's obvious that we didn't meet our expectation for us as management, as players, and for sure for our fans. So, like I mentioned, moving forward, we got to do some things that we got to evaluate the whole thing. There's 21 games left, and the goal is to get younger, faster, and with character, and that's what we're going to try to do moving forward.
Was there at all a possibility for you guys?
Here's what I love about general managers now at this point. I mean, this is the reason why I won't put hockey players on this show. I mean, we'll on an occasion, but here's the reason why I overall, over the course of this show, want to have hockey players on only 1% of the time. 99% of the time, I want to avoid talking to hockey players, is because they say the same thing over and over again. Yeah, we just gotta, get up more in the zone. We gotta get on a forecheck. We gotta get on our toes. We're playing on our heels right now. We need to play on our toes. We need to get on the forecheck a little bit better. We're leaving them a little bit too much room. If you're interviewing a defenseman, I think we just need better gap coverage. We got to close our gaps up a little bit. Really try and turn things around here in this period. Give 110%, and it's the same stuff. Now the general manager checklist is. We got to get younger and faster. I don't know. I don't know if you know that as the ship is sinking, Their little lifeline, their little lifeboat is, you know what? We're going to try and, really get younger and faster. That's really where we need to be at. I mean, it's the same garbage. It's the same garbage all the time. Now, literally, Bergevin, I think he literally went out there going, let me see if I can fit in younger and faster 10 times. It's literally the meow game from Super Troopers. He literally, meow, we got to get younger, meow faster. Like, that's literally what he's doing at these press conferences now. When you have no answers, it's okay. As a manager, you don't have to have answers. You just have to be able to say the words younger and faster, and it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Boss going to fire you? Just walk on in there and tell him you're going to get younger and faster, and it'll be all right. It'll be just fine. Yeah. We have to play our game. We got to put the puck in the net. We got to pepper this goalie more. We got to put the puck in the net, and we got to play our game. Well, what happened? What went wrong? We just got away from playing our game. We got away from it. And now I think we got to get back to playing our game. Well, what should we expect in the third period? We got to get back to playing our game in this period. We really, honestly, we just got to get back to, we got to get pucks on net. We got to get the puck behind their D. We got to get on our forecheck. And you're sitting there going, Okay, that's the same thing. You said the same thing 3 different ways. You just said the same thing 3 different ways. For once, I'd like to hear a hockey player go, you know what we got to do is pull our head out of our ass, because most of us are looking at girls in the stands or dreaming about the pretzel guy who's putting the extra cups of cheese all around. God, I would love a pretzel with cheese right now. Starving. Just starving. So a little bit of cliche action being thrown around from Mark Bergevin, but can you honestly blame the guy? I mean, he's been beaten down and abused, and literally the first question was, why are you still here? I mean, you can't help the guy from going to the old cliche well. Who said, Louis, Canadians are so polite, except in hockey interviews. That's true. They're the politest people ever. They are the politest people ever, except in hockey interviews. That is such a valid point. Same thing to go along with the younger and faster thing. Here's Bergevin finally coming to the realization that the rest of the hockey world came to about 6 years ago, which is you have to build through the draft. It is super important.
Well, I don't know if it's a trend, but I believe that teams are less and less willing to give picks because the NHL now more than ever with the cap, I believe, is based on drafting players and bring them through the system. So I believe moving forward is going to be less and less. Again, I might be wrong, but that's what I see the trend going.
Harpen?
It's always a good thing, too, when you point out trends that have been taking place for the last 6 years. That's always nice. It's always great. I don't know if this is a trend, but honestly, just judging on what everybody else sees and has been saying and what you guys have been writing about so much for the last 6 years and what I'm finally catching on to in the last 3 weeks, I'm going to go ahead and say that people don't want to trade draft picks. And I don't really know why. I think it's the cap. Maybe it has something to do with every team is trying to get younger and faster. I don't really know. This could be me, but call me crazy. Call me crazy. I think at a certain point you snap. He has to face these people every day, and he's got a losing team in Montreal. At a certain point, you just snap, and you just start going crazy. Uncle Buck, not too many GMs come out. Yeah, you know when Bergeron will know he's crazy when he comes out and says we need to get older and slower. Which, by the way, if you look at the deadline a couple of years ago when they got bigger, older, and slower, that was a bad move for them. Do you remember that trade deadline when they went out and got, was it Moen? And there was a couple of guys that they pulled off, and it was like, these are all big, slow guys. And everybody was going, literally everybody's adding speed. And the Montreal Canadiens just, picked up 3 guys that you need an egg timer to clock their time around the ice, blue line to blue line. You need an egg timer. You can time them with a sundial going down the ice, and he's going, yeah, we just need to get bigger. We just need to get bigger. when I was a kid, I would trade away any draft picks on Madden. No big deal. This is real life. It's true. No, it's true though. People build through the draft. But we've known this for years. For years, we've known this. So I really don't know where poor Mark Bergevin comes from with this sort of talk. No doubt somebody that won the draft was Kevin Cheveldayoff, picking up Paul Stastny. How exactly did that trade come about? I think you'll be surprised to hear this little clip, because you think a lot of these deals are, we hear rumors for a long time and, buzz and this and that. How about a text message? Because that's literally how this deal came about. It was literally like high school kids asking each other out. Like, hey, what do you think about a movie on Friday? Send. That was literally how this little trade came out between Kevin Cheveldayoff and the St. Louis Blues.
Could you walk us through the Stastny deal?
So again, without divulging too much, got a text from Doug in St. Louis a couple of days ago that he said, depending on how some of the outcomes might be, going in that direction for them, that he may look at doing something like this. I immediately responded that I'd be very interested if it ever got to that point, and things progressed from there.
How'd you keep it so quiet?
Again, in this situation here, with the player having full no trade, ultimately, it was going to be his decision. So, when we did come to the final agreement, we really, it was kind of went unsaid. Like it's the sanctity amongst organizations that honestly is quite refreshing. That we both knew that this was a person's family at stake. This is a person's decision at stake, and he earned that right to have that no trade. And so for us, there was there was never going to be any leakage, certainly from our side to damage the reputation of that player.
Well, listen, anytime you could avoid leakage, I can tell you that's a good day. Okay, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether it's rumors or any other form of anywhere. Leakage, avoidage is good. Secondly, I love the question, how did you keep it so quiet? Easy. I didn't go squealing to you guys, and neither did the other guy. That is exactly how, I love how we think these leaks come from these magical places. Like there's microphones hidden or people overhear people. Leaks come from teams or agents. There's the only two places the leaks can come from. So if neither team decides to leak it, guess what? It never gets out. So there's Kevin Cheveldayoff, who won the day literally on a text message. Will you go out with me? was the text message, or in this particular case, would you like a Paul Stastny? Which proves a couple things. One, it's nice that these old guys are technologically savvy enough to text each other, because I see most of them still using flip phones where they got to hit, the 6 button 3 times just to get a J. Two, you look at a team and where they are at, and one of the things that we talked about was the St. Louis Blues and the fact that they're only a point out of a playoff spot, yet by all accounts seems like they're throwing in the towel by trading a Stastny. And, literally 3-6-1 in their last 10, which moves them out of that position. Sometimes it just takes 10 games before the deadline to determine your season. One can be hopeful. One can say, man, maybe we can turn this around. Or I know we don't have that great of a team, but we're winning. So to hell with it. We're going to ride these guys and see if they can turn it around. Sometimes it's hard to evaluate and really know what you have. But in this particular case, this losing streak comes a week later. Maybe they don't sell Stastny. If it comes three weeks ago and you're able to rebound and even it out, maybe even pick up some more wins, you don't make this move. So timing is everything. And in this particular case, the reason why I played the clip for you, it just goes to show you, he didn't want to divulge too much, Cheveldayoff, but you do get an idea of St. Louis made a decision to move a major piece within the last, week and a half. And, that's how frugal this could be. So for as patient as GMs can be, and all you hear them say is patience, 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 we're going to let this evolve. We're going to let this come to us, so on and so forth. sometimes it only takes 6 games and 6 bad ones for your whole entire season to turn in a different direction. Now, again, I say, if they trade Stastny and maintain themselves and wind up getting into the playoffs, that's a huge win for St. Louis because you'll get the playoff run, and now you have the picks back in return for Stastny. But if you don't, then you don't, and you're on your way to a little bit of a rebuild here. Jason Botterill from the Buffalo Sabres is by far my favorite piece of audio. And then we'll hear from Jeff Gordon of the Rangers, and we'll hear from Stevie Y as well. But let me tell you why I love Jason Botterill's comments. Is one, I feel like at the surface, he kind of screwed up this Kane deal. 2, after hearing what he said, I still kind of feel that way. But 3, I do sort of feel like perhaps maybe it wasn't all that much of his fault. Putting that aside for a second, and I want to know and want to see this in the comments from everybody watching. Just give me a numeric number. How many offers do you think Jason Botterill got for Evander Kane? Not teams calling. How many legit trade offers do you think he got? Like where they said, we will give you this, this, and this for Evander Kane. And he had to answer. I want to know opinions. There's no right or wrong answer. Don't think too much. Give me the first thing that comes to your brain. How many offers do you think that Jason Botterill got for Evander Kane? Let me know in the comments below, Facebook and YouTube. And if you're listening on a podcast, you can tweet it on over to @HockeyTalkShow on Twitter. If I get one random number from you, I'll know exactly what that means. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think that number was for Jason Botterill? For a guy who everybody knew was on the block from 10, 15 games into the season. Did I scare everybody away? There's been nonstop chatter on YouTube and Facebook, and I asked for a number, and now nobody's answering except for Liz. Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to see what you think. Liz, 1. Uncle Buck, I think he had roughly 5 offers, but the more closer we got to the deadline, it went down to 1 or 2. Let's see here. I've got 3 over here. So 3 legit offers. All right, keep it going. I'm going to play you some of the audio. Keep it going. Take a guess. Again, there's no wrong answers. I'm just curious because I had a number in my head, and I wound up being wrong. And I don't want to say too much, but I wound up being a couple other things when I found out what that number was. As far as the difficulty of trading in Evander Kane, here is Jason Botterill.
Well, I think as you saw throughout the market today, it was a difficult market for rentals. I think the players, the younger players in the league certainly got a good reward. Players with term certainly got good reward. But it was a scenario where we had a lot of conversations out there. There was certainly a lot of interest. But I think you saw with the rental market for rental players, it was more of a difficult market than previous years.
Were GMs concerned with his personal issues?
Look, I think in a situation where when you're looking to acquire a player, there's a lot of things that go into it. They certainly talked to us on a personal level about Evander. I think they talked about the scenario here in Buffalo. The bottom line is it's I think the market dictates what you're going to be able to get out there, and it's a scenario where they're looking at a lot of different things on what's right for their club in certain situations.
So they asked him, look where you asked about his personal issues, and he says, in the politest way possible, yes. But he says that the trade market was difficult for rentals, which I don't know, 100% agree with that. I mean, you got a little bit of a case to make there, of course. Vanek doesn't go for as much as some thought he might. So there is a little bit of an issue there. What about what the Rangers were able to get in return for Rick Nash, who by all accounts, name-wise, marquee-wise, is a better player, but stats-wise, not so much this season.
It's difficult to understand what teams are looking for from a specific need. And I think they could go into more depth. Boston could go in, but I know that they were certainly looking for more of a right winger in their scenario there. It's a scenario when we started out the talks with teams. You look back on past years on what players in Evander's situation, what they got in the open market, those are where our discussions began. And it's the same thing where we tried to talk and have dialogue with pretty much all the teams, certainly the playoff teams, to sort of see what the best offer would be for. And ultimately, we felt the best situation was to make a deal with San Jose.
All right, so there you go. Ultimately, we thought the best deal was to make a deal with San Jose. We talked about this going into it. I said day 2, 3 days before, a week before the deadline, I forget when I said it. Why is Evander Kane still a Buffalo Sabre? It doesn't make any sense. He should be gone by now. If you're going to rent this player, you might as well rent him for 25 games, 30 games instead of 20. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I wonder if the personal issues are a deal. I wonder if the personal issues are an issue. Is the off-ice stuff an issue? Is his attitude amongst fellow teammates an issue? Is his bad reputation catching up to him? All this and that. All right, nobody said more than 5 offers. Realistically, 2 or 3. Liz said 1. Honestly, I wanted to say 0. I honestly assumed that number of legit offers would have been around 7. 7 teams legitimately saying, I will give you this for Evander Kane. Production-wise, he's really good. But the off-ice issues just getting far too much in the way. How many offers did Botterill really have?
No, it's a scenario where we felt we respect what Evander brings as a player. We think he is a premium player. And it was a scenario where we talked about that to different teams as a starting point for discussions. And then it gets to a scenario where canvassing the market, seeing what the market is, what are teams willing to pay? And ultimately, that's what it comes up to. From a standpoint of over the last couple of months on where we're at, we certainly had a lot of interest, a lot of discussion with different teams. The bottom line is we had one legitimate offer for Evander, and that's why we worked off of it with San Jose.
Ouch. Ouch. One legitimate offer for Evander Kane, and that's what we worked off of. Imagine months and months of discussion, people kicking tires, getting a price from you, all this and that, the back and forth, and they wound up with one offer. Guys, this is a massive problem. A massive problem. I mean, in no way, shape, or form should you have by far the leading rental candidate on the market for a long time, and you only get one legitimate offer for him? One. I mean, that's a huge problem. That is a huge problem. You can only rustle up one offer for Evander Kane. That's surprising. He's got 20 goals. He's got 20 assists. I mean, he's got 40 points in 61 games. Louis, one legitimate offer. Any offer is surprising. I got to disagree. I honestly felt like 7 offers. He's a 20-goal scorer. He's the easiest rental on the planet. Take my picks and a prospect. Give me the 20-goal scorer. Put him on my top line. How many teams, Calgary, all these teams struggling to score goals in a playoff picture? How many of these teams? The Anaheim Ducks, 176 goals for, the lowest in the West of any team that's in the playoff picture. Speaking of, aforementioned Calgary has scored more goals than the Anaheim Ducks, and Calgary is not in a playoff spot, and Anaheim is. The Colorado Avalanche have scored 190 goals and are not in a playoff spot, and Anaheim is. I mean, you mean to tell me this guy couldn't gather more than one legit offer? That says two things to me. Either one, Kane's issues are far superseding anything, and after this contract, nobody will go near him. Or two, Jason Botterill is a moron who ran out of time and didn't know how to juggle these offers the right way. Because we can't possibly lay this all on Kane. I mean, you could, but any intelligent person will tell you it takes two to tango in this scenario. And if you're, by the way, Botterill was asked, and he skated around the question, if your price was so far ridiculous that nobody got back to you a second or third time, if you refuse to relent so much so, that's your fault. That's your fault. I mean, we can't lay this all on Kane that it's just all pure off-ice issues. Because off-ice issues aside, 40 points in 61 games. I don't know many teams that would pass on that. How much trouble can the guy really get into in a 19-game scenario and playoffs? I mean, sure, you can get into trouble, but probably not much. Probably not much. Uncle Buck, I think the GM is to blame here, hands down. That's kind of how I feel about it. You know, really after thinking about this, I think he blew this in a major way. You have got to get more. If the well is really dry, fine. But if you're not engaging more in players, in general managers for players, I mean, I have a hard time thinking that you couldn't fathom another deal. You couldn't keep another team interested. You couldn't keep the Anaheim Ducks interested. You couldn't keep the Minnesota Wild interested. The Minnesota Wild aren't that far ahead of the Anaheim Ducks. And neither is San Jose, which is why they went out and got him. Because they realized we need more scoring. And so they went out and got more scoring. The Philadelphia Flyers, again, only have 189 goals for. That's not as good as the Caps. It's not as good as Pittsburgh. These are the teams they're going to have to play in the playoffs. They could have used scoring. They could have used plenty of scoring. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. I don't know. I just don't see it. I really, really don't see it. Let's go over to Stevie Yzerman. Why'd you feel the need to put this many great players together on your team?
Well, Ryan McDonagh plays in all situations he has throughout his career with the Rangers. We think we know he's an excellent two-way defenseman. Defends very well, kills penalties, plays on the power play, and he's got a ton of playoff experience. So he fits in very well in our blue line. And so we feel our back end is better, obviously.
All right, there's Stevie Yzerman, not really giving us a whole hell of a lot there on why he felt the need to go out and load up. But just to save a little bit of time here, because we're getting towards the end of the show, 20 minutes ago, he really, obviously wants to go for it, sees this season and next season as his opportunities to do exactly that, and really just puts himself in a position where, he's got JT Miller under contract for a little while longer. And, he's got a really, really all-star lineup now all the way around. McDonagh's under contract next year. Miller's under contract for 2 more. So he feels really good about where he's at with his team. To the general manager that he worked with, Jeff Gorton, Ranger fans, I'll give you an opportunity to see where Jeff's head is at, and then we'll get an evaluation of where some of these players are that he just recently acquired in these several deals, especially the one with Tampa.
Well, I mean, obviously, we've had a big week here where we've basically made a lot of trades with a rebuild in mind, getting younger, getting character, getting skaters, getting some draft picks, and just basically create an opportunity and bringing in youth to the organization to build this thing as we go forward.
All right, so then again, more of the mission statement: younger, faster, build to the draft, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So what does he think about some of the players that he just got in some of these deals? Here's his evaluation.
Sure. I mean, I'll start with Brett Howden. He's a center we've covered it for a while. He's a big guy, rangy, good skater. We like his upside, his skill, but we also like the character of him. We like the fact that he plays against the better players, that he can check and do a lot of different things. Real good person. So we're really happy with him and his ability and his future. Libor Hayek is a defenseman we've liked for a long time, going back to the draft, and even after the draft, he's really come into his own as a player, as somebody that's has an offensive side, has defensive side. He's a physical player. He can skate. He plays the way the game's played today. So again, character guy, top shape, condition, good size. And then, Nemesnikov, we talked about his versatility that will help us. And a good player. He's got some points. He's been in the league for a while. There's a lot of different things he can do. And then obviously the first round pick and the possibility of another first round pick. Those are exciting for our future. So good opportunity for us again to get younger and better and as we rebuild.
He went with better instead of faster, but as you can tell there, his comments not too far off the pace from some of the other managers that are in the league. So that was Jeff Gorton with his thoughts on some of his acquisitions. And I like that for the Ranger fans. You guys get to hear now what the new boss says about his new players and how he feels about them. And the other thing that I find interesting here that I find to be true with general managers for the most part is that managers never forget a draft. Never forget. If they're scouting a guy and they have their eye on a guy and they like a guy, they never forget that. A lot of times they try and get that guy at some point down the line. So you heard what he said about Howden. We liked him in the draft. He wasn't there for us. And here they are all these years later, and they were able to pick him up. Managers like certain players, player types, and things of that nature, and they never forget that stuff. It's never a case of, oh, I couldn't draft that guy. Oh, well. It's always, it's always in the back of their mind, that guy. That guy. If I have a chance, if I do a deal with that team, I'm going to try and pluck that guy. It doesn't even matter if it's, they think they got a 30-goal scorer in there that the team doesn't know about, or they just think they got a good bottom six forward. Like, it doesn't make a difference. If they want a guy, they do whatever they can to get that guy. And that's what general managers do, besides trying to get younger and faster. All right, we're past the trade deadline. I'm sure we'll have some more things trickling in as far as that goes. For instance, Austin saying the Pens were extremely close on landing McDonough. I love these folktale stories that come out of trade deadlines. I'm sure we'll be hearing a bunch of that. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how the Pittsburgh Penguins could wind up fitting McDonough's deal into their cap situation, but I don't doubt that they were obviously trying. Clearly, Jim Rutherford is going for it, and how can you blame him? I mean, a la the Chicago Blackhawks, who have become a mess this season. 3 championships in 6 years turned out to be really good for the Chicago Blackhawks, even though we all know they're going to go through tough times now. There's not a one of us who wouldn't trade 3 or 4 tough years following 3 championships in X amount of years. And here come the Pittsburgh Penguins with a chance to, win 3 in a row, something that honestly hasn't been done since the, it wouldn't even have been Edmonton, right? It would have been the Islanders, I'm guessing. Am I missing somebody in there? No. Edmonton won 4 and 5, right? And it was the Islanders who won 3 in a row. So, they have an opportunity to do something, and they're going to go all in. And it doesn't down me. They tried to get McDonough. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to get Kane and Carlson and anybody else, Doesn't surprise me at all. Sandra, why is Mrazek playing so well for Philly? He never played so well for the Red Wings. Change the scenery, kick in the rear end. It's a plethora of, things. Sometimes, like I said, with John Tavares and free agents and Steven Stamkos, sometimes you want to get winked at by the guy or gal on the other side of the bar. You don't want to necessarily go home with them. You may have a significant other or a career or whatever else you're worried about. But it's nice to get, winked at. And right now, Peter Mrazek is getting hugged. It's like getting hugged by your favorite aunt, It's just warm and nice. And, she doesn't judge you. She loves you no matter what. Gives you $5 when you're a kid every time you see her. That's what it's like to get traded. When you're in a scenario where Peter is, and I mean, let's look at this literally. You're in a scenario where Mrazek is, you've played well, you've been streaky, but you've played well for the most part, and you have literally been involved in trade rumors for 4 years. It's been 4 years of this Howard Mrazek stuff, and you've literally been on the market in the trade rumor world for the longest time. It wouldn't probably make you feel all that great. Now here comes a team who has an opportunity for you. You can easily be the number one guy, and they just traded for you. They just said, you're our guy. You're the one, Pete. Come on in here. We're not going to judge you just because you have only one E in your name, and your name is Peter. You come on in here. Forget second E's. We hate second E's. Get in here for the real thing, and let's make this happen together. And that kind of love, that kind of appreciation, Ron Hextall, who was a pretty good goaltender in his day, saying, you're the guy. You're going to help lead us here. Huge opportunity. Your confidence, just how you feel, is just totally enriched. So I'm not surprised. And I said it when he got acquired. He could be the mediocre thing that just kind of helps you get through, or he could be that spark, and there they go. And there they went. There was one question that I wanted to get back to now, and I can't remember what it was. What team's future are you most worried about, and which team's future are you least worried about? I'm least worried about the Pittsburgh Penguins right now because I really think they are in a strong position to three-peat. I love Tampa. I love the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I love the Boston Bruins. No doubt that the Flyers are hot right now. And, of course, the Washington Capitals with Ovechkin and Holtby as strong as ever. But you have a team that has been there twice already and has overcome everything. And that showed signs of real exhaustion midway through this year and has really put themselves together towards the end of the season when it counts. And then on top of that, their manager has gone out and did everything he could possibly do, including getting the Vegas Golden Knights involved in a deal just so they could swing a deal and make it happen to put them in a position to win. Guys, there are all great teams here in the playoffs. There's going to be 8 amazing teams that make it, and 6 of them are going to be better than the bottom 2. But there's only one team that has been there before and that now has been given more confidence to get back there, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. They are the team to beat in the East right now. Now, Murray goes down, and he's got a concussion, and can Tristan Jarry fill the void and whatever? 2 weeks from now, we could be talking about the collapse of the Pittsburgh Penguins because they have 0 goaltending. It's entirely possible. But let's say Murray comes back and Jarry holds his own. This team is super dangerous. Super, super dangerous. Let's not forget, Matt Murray lost his dad this year. That's going to be a really big deal to him. He's going to obviously want to win one for Pops. And again, you got all these guys that are in this mix with Brassard now and everything else that they were able to go out and do that want a three-peat. They're going to be tough to beat, man. Super tough to beat. On the other side of that, I put the desperateness of the Capitals together. And how much longer can you let this core try before you move one of these big pieces out? And honestly, I would never want to be the general manager that traded Alexander Ovechkin or Braden Holtby. Never. You know, that's not the kind of general managers don't get into this game to become general managers to trade Alexander Ovechkin. It's just not good. Not where you want to be at. Now, that being said, Nicholas Backstrom, I trade that guy in a second. Can't stand Backstrom. But Kuznetsov and Ovechkin, you got to keep those guys. Backstrom never really liked his game all that much. Thought he was always more of a taker. Who am I worried about moving forward? I'm worried about the Columbus Blue Jackets, to be honest with you. Very, very worried about the Columbus Blue Jackets. Obviously, aside from my worry about the Islanders and Carolina, because those are two teams that stood pat and did nothing. And I don't think that necessarily was a good move for either one of those teams. I'm worried about the Columbus Blue Jackets because they actually did go out and make some moves. And I think it's good that their manager showed some confidence in them to try and go out and get some players and figure it out. The problem is one of those players that they got, who was one of the great moves to get, was Thomas Vanek. And Vanek, to me, is very lazy and very slow and not much of a defensive player. And I just don't see him and Tortorella getting along. I really don't. You know, gun to my head, $259 yesterday, and I have an opportunity to get Thomas Vanek. I'm going to make the deal with Jarl Kekalainen as well. I'm going to pull that trigger too. So I get it, man. I'm going to make the same move. But when I'm done, I'm going to say to myself, what did I just do? Because I put, laziness on skates with a coach who absolutely can't stand that type of player. So I'm worried about the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm worried that they made too many moves. I'm also worried. I said this a while ago, and I'm maintaining it. I'm worried about the New Jersey Devils because Maroon and Grabner, and these were all wonderful additions. But let's be honest, they've slid down the ranks. They're 500 at best. They're still sort of leaning on their early season success. I think it's great that Corey Schneider's going to come back real soon. But at the same time, I just worry about this team being too young and not being able to hold on all the way. Because if Columbus gets hot, if the Islanders get hot, if Carolina gets hot, then the Devils are in trouble. Now, the Devils could get hot. They could. But I see them here, and then they're here, and then they're here. It's literally like they're just slowly losing their grip on the side of the building in an action movie. So I worry about the Devils, too, a great deal. In the West, I worry about the Dallas Stars. I worry about the Calgary Flames in a huge way. You want to know who I think number one overall to worry about is the Calgary Flames, because they didn't make their deals at the deadline. They made their deals before the season. And Mike Smith hasn't really worked out. And Travis Hamonic was supposed to be a great deal. They gave up 2 first-round draft picks for Travis Hamonic, and they find themselves struggling for a wild card spot. They're tied with the Kings right now, but they find themselves on the outside looking in because they lose the tiebreaker. So I'm super worried about the Calgary Flames because, by all accounts, this should be a far better team than they've turned out to be. Goudreau, and again, like I said, the Smith acquisition and all these players who came in, Hamonic, Smith, some of the moves that they made, not only, in this offseason, but, last season and before, and what Brad has been building over there, it just makes me worry. It just makes me worry a little bit. They have a few 1, 2, 3, 4 many underachievers. Obviously, the Monahans, the Goudreaus, and Kachuk have stepped up in a big way, and Dougie Hamilton has been wonderful, and Backlund's been serviceable, and Furlan has 20 goals in 61 games. But Sam Bennett has underachieved. Michael Frolik has underachieved. Troy Brouwer is a black hole in this lineup. Matt Stajan, again, not supposed to be an offensive powerhouse, but 3 goals, 5 assists. Christopher Stieg is super disappointing. They got some dark spots on this roster, and I am really, really worried about the Calgary Flames, especially when you throw in the arena issues and all of that. I think it's something to really worry about. So if you want my answer, Calgary 1, Columbus 2, and Islanders 3. Carolina 4, Dallas 5. I can't remember if I named any others. I think a top 5 teams to worry about is pretty darn good. Went a lot longer than I thought we were tonight, but we did have a lot of stuff to get to, and I'm glad that we got to it. Hopefully you guys learned something by hearing from the general managers directly. As far as the games go for tonight, give me Boston over Carolina at home. Give me the Pens against the Devils, also at home. Give me the Caps at home against the Ottawa Senators. Give me Toronto on the road in Florida. Give me Minnesota against St. Louis. I don't think that the Blues respond to Stastny being traded. Give me Winnipeg and Nashville. That should be the national game tonight, and it isn't. It's Vegas and the Kings. There's got to be an earlier game, though. St. Louis and Minnesota is the early game for the National tonight in the States. Give me Winnipeg over the Nashville Predators. Again, I go with the home team. Winnipeg making some big moves. I think they'll be super excited.